Every now and then, you hear a story that just clicks. A story that anyone who's ever taken a big risk needs to hear. This is one of those. It's about a failure that was so catastrophic it almost ended a career. But somehow, that same disaster became the secret blueprint for a massive success.
So let me ask you this right up front. How on earth can losing almost $30,000 be a good thing? I know it sounds completely backward, right? But that's the exact question we're going to unpack. We are going to see how one of the worst moments in an investor's life actually became the key to their fortune.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 2023. We're looking at a property on a street called Willow Creek. The plan was totally standard. Buy a fixer-upper, do a rehab, rent it out. Classic stuff. But it all started to go wrong with what seemed like a really small, kind of smart decision.
And here it is. This is the moment it all went off the rails. To save about $800 and maybe 5 days, the investor decided to skip the professional sewer and foundation inspections. Just skip them. The thinking was, hey, I can close faster and keep a little extra cash in my pocket. Seemed like a tiny shortcut for a nice little reward.
And you really have to get the mindset here. It wasn't just about the money, it was about ego. That feeling of, I've done this before, I know what I'm looking at. The investor saw some basement cracks and just thought, it's just normal settling, I can eyeball this. That one single assumption was going to be a big, big problem.
So that one little decision didn't just cause one little problem. No way. It was like tipping over the first domino. It set off this complete cascade of failure that revealed the true and honestly terrifying cost of that so-called $800 shortcut. Literally 2 weeks after closing, the main sewer line just collapsed. Then, of course, the big rains came and suddenly those normal settling cracks were gushing water. They weren't normal at all. The bill to fix what a simple inspection would have cost, $42,000. Suddenly, that $800 saving looks pretty ridiculous, huh? And the pain just kept coming. It wasn't just the huge repair bill. While all this chaos was happening, the house was just empty for 7 straight months. No rent checks coming in, but you better believe that mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, all of those bills were still coming out every single month. It was a constant bleed. So, in the end, after pouring all that money into repairs and carrying costs, the only option left was to sell the property just to make the bleeding stop. And the final number on the spreadsheet? A loss. A net loss of $28,500. Just a total, unmitigated disaster. But, the numbers never really tell the full story, do they? The emotional hit was just brutal. This quote really says it all. Complete burnout. I almost quit real estate entirely. The financial loss was one thing, but the psychological blow was almost a total knockout. But right here, at the absolute bottom, this is where the story gets really interesting. Because instead of giving up, there was a shift in perspective. A decision was made to stop looking at this whole mess as a failure and start looking at it as an education. A very, very expensive education. And this led to this brilliant concept called real estate tuition. Just think about it for a second. It's the price you pay for a lesson that gets so deeply burned into your brain that you will never, ever forget it. It's a loss so painful, it literally changes how you do everything from that day forward, making you smarter and way more careful. And once you see it that way, everything changes. All of a sudden, that negative $28,500 isn't just a loss anymore. No, it's the price tag. It's the cost of the most valuable class they ever took. It was the tuition for the University of Hard Knocks. All right, so let's fast forward 2 years to 2025. The investor's ready to get back in the ring with a new property on Maple Ridge Avenue. But this time, they're armed with a secret weapon. It's called the Willow Creek Lesson Strategy. And I mean, just look at the contrast here. Instead of trying to save a measly $800, the investor now deliberately spends $2,500. They got every single inspection imaginable. Sewer scope, foundation engineer, mold, electrical, you name it. No more eyeballing it. This was about buying data. And wouldn't you know it, here's the payoff. The inspections found a huge problem. The roof was shot, and it needed a full replacement. Now, the old way of thinking would have been to panic, right? Or just walk away from the deal. But the new, educated way of thinking saw this not as a problem, but as leverage. So, armed with a professional report with detailed photos and cost estimates, the investor went back to the seller. This wasn't an opinion anymore. It was just cold, hard proof. And the result? They negotiated $15,000 off the asking price to cover the cost of that new roof.
So let's look at the final numbers, because this is where that tuition paid at Willow Creek really starts to feel like the best investment they ever made. This is where the payoff happens.
I mean, the difference is just night and day. Because they knew everything up front, the rehab budget stayed perfectly on track. No surprises. Instead of sitting vacant for 7 months, this place was rented out in just 45 days. It immediately started kicking off $1,200 a month in positive cash flow. And the big one? In just the first year, the property gained an incredible $65,000 in equity.
And when you put it all side by side like this, the story becomes crystal clear. It's unavoidable. On the left, you have the tuition. You skip the small costs and you end up with massive repair bills and a huge loss. On the right, you have the payoff. You spend a little upfront to get the data, you have zero surprises, and you walk away with a $65,000 gain. It really couldn't be more obvious.
So here's the bottom line. That incredibly painful, almost career-ending loss at Willow Creek, it wasn't really a failure in the long run. It was necessary. It was the tuition that had to be paid to learn how to turn a huge problem into a $65,000 win. The loss literally made the profit possible.
And that kind of leaves us with a question for you. I mean, sure, this is a real estate story, but the lesson here is universal. So think about your own career, your own life. What setbacks or failures have you had? And maybe, just maybe, those painful moments weren't failures at all. Maybe they were just the tuition you had to pay for your own most valuable lessons.